So Napoleon is dead. He died in exile on the island of Santa Elena on May 5, 1821. But what if he didn't die there? What if the great general, emperor, and man-whore managed to escape his captors and flee to the New World? Hello and welcome to this channel. Today we are going to do a little bit of alternate history. The year is 1815. You've just witnessed the fireworks display at Waterloo, as the English, Prussians, and Dutch have just defeated Napoleon. Now you are one of two people. Either you are Napoleon himself, freshly escaped from your captors, or you are the United States. Let's start with where Napoleon might end up in the United States. There are three possible locations he might land. Louisiana, which at this time had been recently purchased by the US from France, and was still very much a French-speaking territory with plenty of ties to the old regime. Then there's the option of him landing in the Caribbean, specifically in New Orleans, which at this time was still a colonial port and a major hub for European shipping. Finally, he could always just try to land in New York, a major port city, and at this time, the most densely populated place in all of America. Now, let's assume that our boys in blue over here at the US Coast Guard managed to capture Napoleon. They bring him before the nearest court, and it's up to you, Mr. President, what to do with him now. So what would the US do? It's hard to say. There are some things to consider. The Federalist Party, who were staunch supporters of the current system of government, might have been in favor of keeping Napoleon around, since they generally supported a strong central government. On the flip side, Jeffersonians were generally opposed to having a monarch anywhere near the new republic. And given that Thomas Jefferson was president at this time, this is probably the more likely scenario. Let's assume Jefferson doesn't want anything to do with the escaped emperor and manages to broker a deal with the British to send Napoleon back their way. But upon arrival in England, the grateful citizens of Britain quickly realize that they don't actually want a returned king, and the whole monarchy thing goes out the window. Cue a decade of relative peace between the US and Britain, but that doesn't mean Napoleon isn't wanted. Throughout the Americas, there are many French Canadians who would gladly welcome Napoleon as their own personal king. Not to mention there are also French territories in the Western Hemisphere, namely in the Caribbean and even Louisiana. Could Napoleon have rallied these disparate groups together to form his own French empire in America? Perhaps. Could he have joined the US military as a general and helped expand the country further west, like maybe even fight in the Mexican-American War? Maybe. Could he have served as an advisor to the US military given his extensive knowledge of land warfare? Possibly. If he stayed out of politics, of course, another option would be for Napoleon to simply stay in America, possibly writing books about his adventures in his own personal brand of Americana. It's not too hard to imagine a version of America where Napoleon is some sort of revered statesman. But of course, none of these options would be without their problems. For example, the British would almost certainly demand his extradition. And if the US refused, there would almost certainly be some sort of renewed Anglo-American conflict, possibly even war. And then there's the issue of slavery. Napoleon famously ended slavery in the French colonies, even though he himself was a slave owner. In America, however, the institution of slavery was deeply ingrained in the southern states, and any attempt to abolish it would almost certainly meet with stiff resistance. This could play out in interesting ways, especially in the state of Louisiana, which had a significant black population, or even in Haiti, where Napoleon had previously fought and suppressed a slave rebellion. But ultimately, if we're being honest, it's hard to imagine a world where Napoleon comes to America and things don't eventually devolve into some sort of weird, wacky comedy. Napoleon crashing around the American frontier wearing one of those tall top hats looking for a moose to shoot, accidentally starting the Mexican-American War, because he couldn't understand why the US wasn't attacking the Aztecs already, or getting into a slapping match with Andrew Jackson at a party. Yeah, somehow I think that last one might happen regardless of the timeline. So what would have become of Napoleon? Would he have become an American folk hero, a dangerous exile, a tragic relic of the past? Or maybe he would have just faded away into obscurity, like Elvis or Area 51. It's hard to say. So what do you think? How do things play out in our alternate present day, absent Napoleon's presence in Europe? Do monarchies remain stronger? Does the 1848 revolution still take place? How does the legend of Napoleon live on? Or perhaps more importantly, what does it mean for America? Let us know your thoughts.